What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure you hit subscribe below and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB and at ETB Network. On tonight's episode, we got a bunch of stuff going on as Pascal Siakam and Dejounte Murray, their trade markets are starting to heat up as both teams are looking to deal them quickly. We got the new AP Top 25 that came out. Auburn keeps on rolling, so we'll be going over Auburn and all their everything that's been going on with them over the past couple of weeks. Then, of course, the top college games of the week, and we'll be going over the NBA Power Rankings as normal. We also wanted to introduce WolfSpreads. WolfSpreads has been sponsoring our Football Friday here on the network over the last few weeks. They're now going to be network-wide, so they will be sponsoring this show. They'll be sponsoring all the rest of the shows. So I wanted to give a big shout out to them, and in the future we'll be having more and more stuff with WolfSpreads, especially on the 3&D. So that's going to be awesome to check out. It's going to be a lot of more betting stuff for you guys. So we're very excited to incorporate that into the show going forward. So jumping right into things, Pascal Siakam. So Pascal Siakam, the trade market is begun to heat up a little bit for him. So the rumor came out that Pascal Siakam and the Raptors are heading for a split. So the Raptors kind of came out and said that they're not looking to extend him. He's going to be a free agent after this season. They're kind of like looking to go into a rebuild. So Siakam getting traded at the deadline is more than likely going to happen. The question is who exactly he's going to get traded for. That's going to be really interesting to see exactly what's going to happen with that. But Siakam is definitely going to get traded. One of the teams early on, I think, that kind of pops up as an interesting landing spot is the Golden State Warriors. Now, the Warriors are in a little bit of a difficult situation. They just re-upped Draymond Green. Andrew Wiggins has not played much with injury, and he has not played well this season. He's getting paid a lot of money, so trading that contract would be difficult. But he does seem like a fit for the Golden State Warriors. People were saying that the Warriors are a little bit interested in Siakam. They could also trade. They have a couple of young pieces that the Raptors could be interested in. I don't think the Raptors would really be interested in Wiggins or Draymond Green. Those would kind of be throw-ins if any of those guys get traded. But Jonathan Kuminga and or Moses Moody could be very interesting pieces that the Raptors might look to try to acquire if that were to go down. But there would probably be a lot of moving pieces that would have to happen for this entire situation to go down. I'm not really expecting too much out of this, out of Siakam and out of Siakam heading to Golden State. There could be a bunch of other teams that jump into the mix as well, especially with the deadline coming up. So I'm definitely excited to see that. But it seems more and more likely that he's going to get traded, and the Raptors are going to try to shed some of their contracts. They're on the bottom half of the league again this year, so they're going to try to accumulate maybe some draft picks and try to build towards the future after losing Fred VanVleet and losing a couple of their other key pieces. So Pascal Siakam, his trade rumors going around, so that'll be interesting to see. Another guy that's getting mentioned a lot in trade rumors is Dejounte Murray. So the Atlanta Hawks are also in an interesting situation. They have not performed well this year. They're right now barely in the play-in. They've been under 500 for the majority of the season, and they're pretty much looking to be able to trade anybody not named Trae Young or Jalen Johnson. They're going to look to try to retool their team. They want to build the team around Trae Young and Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson's finally gotten a starting role this season, and he's ended up playing greatly. So they're going to be looking to trade a lot of guys at the deadline. Dejounte Murray is the biggest one, obviously. He'll be a free agent after this season, or I think he has one season left. A lot of teams are going to be in on him. Clint Capella is another guy that they're going to be shopping. Bogdan Bogdanovic is going to be another one. DeAndre Hunter possibly. So there's a bunch of names that are going to come up that the Hawks are going to be looking to trade. But Dejounte Murray is the biggest one. And several teams are already in the mix for Dejounte Murray. The Los Angeles Lakers have become a big player for Dejounte Murray, even though some sources came out and said that he most likely will not get dealt to the Lakers. The Lakers probably do not have enough to trade for him. That would kind of be a little bit of a tougher pull because they'd have to give up more draft capital and a bunch of stuff besides that. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers kind of fall out of that. But the New York Knicks are another one that are looking heavily on Dejounte Murray, apparently, and willing to trade possibly multiple first-round picks for him. So that's a guy that they think could be the missing piece to this team. Personally, as a Knicks fan, I think if you can get a good deal for Dejounte Murray, that's good. But the guy I've always wanted is Donovan Mitchell. And I think it's going to be very difficult to trade for Donovan Mitchell because Cleveland still thinks that they're a contender. And rightfully so. They are still a contender. But I think that it's a little bit difficult to make that trade happen and to continue and to pay Donovan Mitchell in the future. Mitchell will be a free agent after next season. So that's a free agent target that the Knicks could likely land too. He's a New York guy. A lot of people think that he wants to come back to New York, play for New York, and play for the Knicks. And he's a much better player. He's a better player than Dejounte Murray. I'm not going to say much better because Dejounte Murray is a fantastic player. When the Hawks ended up doing this trade with the Spurs and bringing him in before last season, I always thought it was kind of a weird mix having him and Trae Young on the same team in the backcourt. I thought that was kind of weird, but Dejounte Murray is a tremendous defender. He's been a little bit on decline with defense, but he's a good scorer, great rebounder because he's got size as a 6'6" guard, and he's a great passer as well. He's a 7-8 assist type of guy, so he can do a little bit of everything and do a little bit of everything at an all-star level. So that's why the Hawks are going to try to trade him and try to get a lot for him too, because especially if the Hawks are trying to go into rebuilding around Trae Young and Jalen Johnson, it makes sense to deal Dejounte Murray and try to get as much as they can for him. Another team that also kind of jumped into the mix, we don't know how likely this is, but the San Antonio Spurs. So the Spurs ended up getting a haul for Dejounte Murray when they traded him to the Hawks before last season. And they think that they might jump back into the mix and probably end up trading less than they ended up getting for Dejounte Murray. So basically, they steal him back and come back with assets as well if they were to trade for him. I'm not too sure that's going to happen. I don't even know if the Spurs would really be interested in that. I know Dejounte Murray did enjoy his time with the Spurs. He always talked highly of Greg Popovich. Greg Popovich talked highly of him. One of the reasons why he wanted to stay with the Spurs too, but one of the reasons why he was dealt is because Greg Popovich knew that the Spurs were not going to contend anytime soon. He didn't want to waste Murray's prime on a non-contender, so he wanted to deal him to a contender. But he did want to stay with the Spurs. But now that the Spurs have Wembanyama, they still are not great this season, but they might have another top 5 pick coming up this year, and Wembanyama is turning into a sensational player. So it'll be interesting to see. But Dejounte Murray's market is beginning to heat up, and we're going to definitely hear a lot more teams jumping in on Murray throughout the next couple of weeks. So that's most of it for NBA news. We're going to jump over to some college basketball news because college basketball has been heating up. We'll jump back into the NBA to wrap up the show with the power rankings, but the Auburn Tigers have been absolutely amazing this season. So we got to talk about them. They've kind of come out of nowhere. They weren't projected to really do much. The SEC has been a little bit of a letdown this season. Tennessee and Kentucky are the only 2 top 10 teams. You have Ole Miss, who just rejoined the top 25 this week. That we'll go over in a few. But Ole Miss has been pretty good. But those are really the only 3 ranked teams that have been consistent. Florida has been good. Vanderbilt's been okay. There's been a few. LSU's been kind of good, but not amazing. The SEC hasn't been fantastic this year, but Auburn has just kept on rolling. So Bruce Pearl's squad has now won 9 straight games, and they're doing it completely out of good coaching. They haven't had any flashy players. Janai Broom is by far their best player, but they don't have a stacked roster, and they've been fantastic. They're 14-2 now on the season. They're 3-0 now in SEC play. They've beat Arkansas, Texas A&M, and LSU in their first 3 games of SEC play, so they're 3-0 to start that. They have Vanderbilt coming up on Wednesday. They're going to be at Vanderbilt. Then they'll be at home against Ole Miss on Saturday, and then they'll be at Alabama next Wednesday, are their next 3 games coming up. Their only losses this season came to Baylor, which was the first game of the season. That's actually the only top 25 team that they've played so far this year. So that can be an argument that you can make against them, is that they haven't played any top 25 teams, but they're still ranked 13 this week in the top 25. So the AP poll still considers them one of the biggest contenders in college basketball, despite not even beating a top 25 team yet this season. They've only played one top 25 team. That was the first game of the season when Baylor was preseason ranked number 20. And then they lost to Appalachian State as well. So that was a pretty bad loss. But that happened on December 3rd. They have not lost a game since December 3rd. It's been a month and a half now since Auburn has lost a game. And they've been able to beat up on some good teams. They beat Indiana. They beat USC. USC was supposed to be a lot better than they have been this year. They were supposed to be like a consistent top 15 team in the nation, and they have been unranked for a while now, so they've been kind of falling. But Auburn has done well, and it's going to be interesting to see how they fare up against Ole Miss on Saturday, because that's going to be only their second top 25 matchup of the season. And they don't play Kentucky until later in the season. They only play Kentucky once this year at home against Kentucky. And they only play Tennessee once this year, too. That's at Tennessee. They play Kentucky on February 17th and then Tennessee on February 28th. So here's the thing. The Auburn has been rolling right now. They're 14-2, 3-0 in SEC play, and they have an extremely easy schedule the rest of the way. The 2 powerhouses of the SEC is pretty weak this year. Alabama hasn't been great either. Mississippi State's been okay. But the 2 powerhouses, Kentucky and Tennessee, they only play once, and they don't play them until the end of February, much closer to SEC tournament time. So they do have a little bit of a lighter schedule. They'll be able to beat up on that, and they probably should end up finishing the season with a really good record. They're ranked at 13 already. Unless they start to fall a little bit and lose some games that they should not lose, they probably won't fall much past that. But they've been off to a great start, and they have a wide open chance to be a consistent top 15 team the rest of the way throughout the rest of the season. They do not have a tough schedule at all, and I think they'll be able to put it together too, because Bruce Pearl's teams are always strong, always well fighting. They only got 2 guys that are averaging more than 10 points a game as well. Janai Broom has been their star player. He leads the team in points, rebounds, and blocks, averaging 15.4 points, 8.4 rebounds, and 2 blocks a game. Jalen Williams is averaging 11.9 points, and they have one other guy too, Aiden Holloway's averaging 10.1 points. And then a bunch of guys averaging over 7 points a game, but they don't have that many top scorers, and they don't have, besides Janai Broom, they don't have anybody who's putting up like amazing stats if you look at their team on paper. But if you see them play in person, you know exactly why they are the way that they are. They're just a well-coached team, and they're scary. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how them not really playing many contenders throughout the entire season is going to come back to bite them when it comes SEC tournament time and eventually March Madness. It's going to be difficult for us to evaluate how good they are against some of the better teams in the nation, but it's going to be interesting to see what exactly happens with Auburn the rest of the way. Jumping over from that, the AP Top 25 came out. So we're doing this episode a day later this week, and the joy about recording this on Monday is we can go over the brand new Top 25 that dropped on the AP poll for college basketball. So there's a lot of movement. I think it was like 15 or 16 top 25 teams lost last week. So there was a lot of movement in this week's top 25, including UConn becoming the new number 1 team in the nation. Purdue fell to number 2 after losing this week, and UConn jumps up to number 1. So they jump in number 1. North Carolina jumped up a few spots. They jumped from 7 to 4. Houston fell a couple spots. They lost twice this week after going into the week undefeated, being the only undefeated team left in the nation. They lost twice this week, so they fall from 2 to 5. Baylor also jumps up a few spots after a couple of big wins from 14 to 9. Wisconsin jumped up from 15 to 11. And then a few other teams that fell a bit. Arizona fell from 8 to 12. Illinois fell 4 spots as well from 10 to 14. And Oklahoma, after 2 losses this week, only fell 6 spots, which I thought was kind of interesting. I thought they were going to fall a little bit more because they had a couple of bad losses this week. They were number 9 ranked last week. Now they're 15 heading into this week. And a bunch of non-Power 6 schools have been sneaking their way into the top 25 and keep rising. Utah State is ranked 16 this week. They jumped from 20 to 16 after a couple more big wins. They're completely destroying the Mountain West right now. The Mountain West has been a power conference this season. They have 4 or 5 teams that are, as of right now, are going to make March Madness. They've been a fantastic conference. And so Utah State jumps up to 16. Marquette fell from 11 to 17, so they fell the furthest out of anybody. They fell 6 spots this week. They just beat Villanova though in a tough game, so that should help their resume heading into next week for the AP poll. And then a couple of 4 teams, or I should say 5 teams, rejoined the top 25. TCU, who was unranked, jumps into number 19. Dayton, who has been unranked all season but has had a great season in the Atlantic 10 Conference, jumps into number 21. Ole Miss jumps back in. They were ranked for a few weeks, fell out of the rankings, and jumped back in this week at 22. Iowa State jumps in for the first time at 25 and at 24, and Texas Tech jumps in for the first time at 25. Colorado State, San Diego State, Clemson, and Texas all fell out of the top 25. Texas should have fell out last week. They barely hung on at number 25, and then they lost again this week. So that was a clear-cut favorite to get eliminated. And the one team that gets snubbed was Seton Hall. I thought Seton Hall was going to make the top 25 this week. They've had a couple of big resume wins over the past several weeks, so I thought that they were going to be able to sneak in. But they were not, and they ended up getting snubbed and didn't make the top 25 this week. So those are all interesting things. So that's the top 25 heading into this week. Makes things very interesting going into the week. There's a lot of good games going on in college basketball, and we'll transition right into the top college games of the week from that. So with the new AP poll, we got some of the top college games of the week going on. Today, day of recording is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so there was a couple of games on today. Marquette beat Villanova. Michigan beats Ohio State, and there's a bunch of other lower down games that are going on today, but those were like the headlines. So jumping into some of the top college games of the week, the first one is number 2 Purdue at Indiana, which is going down Tuesday at 7:00 p.m. on Peacock. So huge rivalry game. Indiana's been a little bit up and down this year. Purdue obviously has been the number 1 team in the country for several weeks this year. They're number 2 this week. Purdue is 15-2 on the season, 4-2 in Big Ten play. They lost to Nebraska on Tuesday and beat Penn State on Saturday. So that loss to Nebraska is what cost them the number 1 seed for this week. Zach Edey has been fantastic again this season. He's the favorite to win National Player of the Year, averaging 22, 11, and 2. Braden Smith has also had a fantastic season, averaging 12.4 points and 6.9 assists, as well as 5.3 rebounds. And for Indiana is 12-5 this year. They're also 4-2 in Big Ten play, so they're tied with Indiana they're tied with Purdue in Big Ten play. Indiana always plays Big Ten tough, always plays Purdue tough. And this game's going to be in Indiana. That's why I think this could be a big upset alert. I'm not too sure that Purdue is definitely going to win this game. But Indiana this past week lost to Rutgers on Tuesday and then beat Minnesota on Friday. Malik Renew has been their star player, averaging 16.3 points, 5.8 assists. And Khalil Ware has had a fantastic sophomore season, averaging 14.8 points, 9.6 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks, as he's looking like he's going to be a first-round pick in the NBA draft this upcoming year. And then another Tuesday night game, we got St. John's at Seton Hall. So this is an unranked game, a rare unranked game that makes my top college games of the week. I thought that when I was making this list, I thought Seton Hall was going to be ranked this week, so that's one reason why I put them in. But these are 2 teams that are just outside of the top 25. They both got a decent amount of votes this week to jump into the top 25. but they both just fell out. So this game's going down Tuesday at 8:30 on FS1. St. John's 12-5 on the season. They're 4-2 in conference play. This past week, they lost to Creighton by 1 point on Saturday. Now, I think St. John's probably would be ranked if they had won that game, because Creighton was ranked 17 this past week and then jumped up a little bit after beating St. John's. But they won by 1 point. It was a little bit of a controversial win. There was a couple of fouls at the end of the game that they could have called on Creighton that didn't go St. John's way. And it makes things a little bit more interesting. So I think that St. John's will be they'll be going up against Seton Hall. So St. John's lost to Creighton this past week by 1 point on Saturday, and then beat Providence on Wednesday. Joel Soriano has been their star player, averaging 17 points and 10.1 rebounds on the season. Dance Jenkins has been great as well, averaging 12.9 points and 6 assists. He's one of the transfers that came over from Iona with Rick Pitino in the big transfer that happened over at St. John's. And then Seton Hall, on the other hand, is almost identical in record to St. John's. They're also 12-5 on the season, but they're one game better. They're 5-1 in Big East play so far this season. And they beat Butler and Georgetown so far this year. Kadari Richmond has been their star player, and he's averaging 16.4 points and 6.6 rebounds to start the year. And Dre Davis is averaging 13.4 points and 5.1 rebounds as well. So he's been playing great. Those are the two star players for Seton Hall this year, so far this season. And St. John's at Seton Hall, it's going to be a good game. It's a good rivalry game. It's a New York versus New Jersey game, so I'm excited for that. And then also Tuesday night, we got number 24 Iowa State at number 20 BYU. This is a Big 12 matchup Tuesday night at 9 o'clock on ESPN+. Iowa State is 13-3 on the season. They just joined the top 25 for the first time this year, and it was because of their big win against Houston on Tuesday. They're 13-3 on the season, 2-1 now in Big 12 play. They beat Oklahoma State on Saturday, and they beat Houston on Tuesday, so two big wins from Iowa State. Iowa State's just been putting together. They haven't had the star power, really any big NBA prospects since Tyrese Halliburton left, but they've been putting together good season after good season. They've been good the last couple of years, sneaking in and out of the top 25, doing a little damage in March Madness without a really sexy roster. And Tamine Lipsey has been their star player, averaging 14.8 points, 5.6 rebounds, 5.6 assists. And Milan Momcilovic is averaging 13.3 points and 3.6 rebounds on the season. And then BYU is 13-3 on the year. They fell all the way to 20. They were up by the top 10 a couple weeks ago, but they've had a couple of bad losses, and they fell all the way down to 20 this week. They're also 13-3 on the season. They're 1-2 though in Big 12 play in their first season in the Big 12. So I think the reason why they're starting to fall a little bit is they're starting to take on the Big 12 conference matchups, and the Big 12 is tough. So they might end up falling out of the top 25 soon. But they beat UCF on Saturday, who's another new Big 12 team, but they lost to Baylor on Tuesday. So that's what made them skid a little bit in the top 25. Jackson Robinson has been their star player, averaging 14.3 points. And Spencer Johnson's averaging 10.9 points, 5.4 rebounds, and 4.2 assists so far this season. And then jumping over from that, one final game that's on Tuesday night is a Mountain West showdown that I had to include because these are two teams that have been fantastic all year long. Number 16 Utah State at New Mexico, Tuesday night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time here on FS1. Utah State has been fantastic this year. They're ranked 16 now in the country this week, which might be one of their highest rankings in school history, if not the highest. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but Utah State 16-1 on the season. They're 4-0 now in Mountain West play. They beat UNLV, Wyoming, and Colorado State this past week. They kicked Colorado State out of the top 25 with that win this week. Great Osabor has been their star player, averaging 18.9 points and 9.6 rebounds. And Ian Martinez has been their second leading scorer, averaging 13.1 points. Martinez has made his way around to a lot of conferences. He was at Minnesota, I believe. He was at a couple of different schools, maybe Maryland. He's a name that's kind of jumped around college basketball, the Power 6 conferences over the past couple of years, but he's now playing for Utah State, and what I would guess is probably his 5th year of eligibility. And then New Mexico, on the other hand, has been really good. They have not been ranked this year because they've lost a couple of bad games, but they're 13-3 on the season. They're 2-2 now in Mountain West play. They beat San Diego State on Saturday, which basically kicked San Diego State out of the top 25. And they also beat UNLV on Tuesday. So New Mexico's got a bunch of guys, too, that are really good players. Jamal Mashburn Jr., who's averaging 16.5 points a game this year. Jalen House is averaging 15.7 points and 4.1 assists. And then Donovan Dent averaging 15.1 points and 5.9 assists this season. And jumping over to Wednesday's games, we got number 18 Creighton at number 1 UConn. The brand new number 1 this week is the UConn Huskies. So the 18th ranked Creighton Blue Jays will be taking them on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock on FS1. Creighton is 13-4 on the season, 4-2 in Big East play. They beat St. John's and DePaul this past week. Baylor Shireman has been one of the best players in the nation, averaging 18 points and 8.3 rebounds. And then their other star players, Trey Alexander and Ryan Kalkbrenner, have also been averaging over 15 points and over 6 rebounds each for them. So that's been their big 3, Shireman, Alexander, and Kalkbrenner this season. Creighton jumped up a little bit again after being able to beat St. John's, but that loss could have kicked them out of the top 25. That was a very close one that they played. And then UConn, on the other hand, is the new number 1 in the country. They just keep rolling. The national championship champions from last year, they're 15-2 on the season. They're 5-1 in conference play now. They beat Xavier and Georgetown last week without a bunch of star power too. Donovan Kling has been hurt for the majority of the season. Alex Caravan was hurt for a little bit. Cam Spencer's their leading scorer at 15.4 points, and Tristan Newton averaging 15.2 points. And then jumping over the SEC, we got Mississippi State at number 8 Kentucky. Wednesday night at 7 o'clock on ESPN2. This is another interesting game. Kentucky lost a close one this past weekend that kind of hurt them because they looked like they were going to jump right back into the top 5 in the nation this week with all the losses that happened, but they ended up losing to Texas A&M on Saturday. But Mississippi State beat Tennessee on Wednesday, which was a huge win. And then lost to Alabama on Saturday. So had they beaten Alabama, they could have got some consideration for the top 25. And Tolu Smith and Josh Hubbard have been their star players, both averaging over 15 points a game. The Kentucky Wildcats are 12-3 this season. They're 2-1 now in SEC play. They beat Mississippi State on Tuesday, and then they lost to Texas A&M on Saturday. So they got a rematch now up against Mississippi State. And then jumping back into the Big 12, we got number 25 Texas Tech at number 5 Houston, Wednesday night at 9 o'clock on ESPNU. So this is a really good game. Houston is skidding a little bit. They've lost their last 2 games after starting off the season undefeated. Texas Tech, though, is 14-2 on the year. They're 3-0 now in Big 12 play after beating Oklahoma State and Kansas State on Saturday. They have a really, really tough schedule coming up. So they're ranked 25 in the nation this week, and they're going to be put to the test. They'll be taking on Houston on Wednesday, BYU on Saturday, and Oklahoma on next Saturday. So the next 3 opponents are all top 20 teams in the nation. And that's just how deep the Big 12 is this year. The Big 12 is really deep. Pop Isaacs has been their leading scorer with 16.3 points. Joe Toussaint, who's a big name around the Big Ten, played for Iowa for many years, averages 14.1 points and 3.9 assists. And Warren Washington averages 10 points and 7.7 rebounds this season for Texas Tech. And then Houston, on the other hand, are 14-2 so far this season. They're 1-2 in conference play. They lost to Iowa State and TCU this week, so that's why they fell a little bit in the rankings. But LJ Cryer averaging 15.6 points this season, and Emmanuel Sharp averaging 13.4 points so far this year. And then jumping into some more Mountain West action, we got Nevada at San Diego State, which is going down late Wednesday night at 11 o'clock on CBS-SN. Nevada has been 15-2 this season. They're 2-1 in Mountain West play. They beat Air Force and Boise State this past week. Jared Lucas has been their leading scorer at 17.4 points, and Keenan Blackshear has also added 16.5 points. And then San Diego State, on the other hand, is 14-3. They're 3-1 in conference play. They just got kicked out of the top 25 this week. They beat San Jose State on Tuesday, but they lost to St. Mary's, I believe, on Saturday. So Jaden Ledee has been their leading scorer at 21.6 points and 8.6 rebounds. He's had a fantastic season so far for San Diego State. And then jumping from Wednesday to Saturday, we got a few weekend games to look forward to. Number 9, Baylor at Texas, Saturday at noontime. Baylor is 14-2 on the season, 3-0 in conference play. They beat BYU and Cincinnati this past week. They jumped all the way back into the top 10. Jacoby Walter, who's going to be a lottery pick in this upcoming draft, has had a great season. Same with Ray J. Dennis and Jalen Bridges. And Texas has been falling a little bit. Texas was barely in the top 25 last week. They fell out completely this week after losing to West Virginia. They also beat Cincinnati, though, this week. And before this game, they'll be taking on UCF on Wednesday. Max A. Smith has been their leading scorer at 18 points a game and 4.4 assists. So this is going to be a good Big 12 rivalry game. This could be a huge win to get Texas's resume back and ready. And the number 15 Oklahoma at Cincinnati, another Big 12 showdown. Cincinnati is another new Big 12 team as well. This one's going down Saturday at 1 o'clock on ESPN+. And Oklahoma is 13-3 on the season, 1-2 in conference play. They lost to TCU and Kansas this week. That's why they fell from 9 to 15. But they play West Virginia on Wednesday before this game. And Cincinnati, on the other hand, is 12-4. They're 1-2 in conference play, and they lost to Texas and Baylor this week. But they play TCU on Tuesday. So that's pretty much the top college games of the week. There's a few more too. That'll be honorable mentions. Number 20 BYU at 25 Texas Tech is going to be Saturday at 6 o'clock. Number 1 UConn takes on unranked Villanova Saturday at 8 o'clock on Fox, and then Saturday at 8:30 on SEC Network will be number 22 Ole Miss taking on number 13 Auburn. So two of the better powerhouses of the SEC will be going about it. So that's definitely going to be an interesting week in college basketball. So I'm excited for some of the games, and with that being said, we're going to jump right back into the NBA. We'll wrap up the show, the NBA Power Rankings. As we've been doing every single week, there's a little bit of a shakeup in my power rankings this week, as there's been a bunch of teams that have kind of jumped around a little bit. The Denver Nuggets were my number 1 team for a long time, and they kind of skidded a little bit, but they're right back into things. They're on a 2-game win streak. They're 7-3. In their last 10 right now are 28-13. They're number 5 now on my power rankings. For this upcoming week, they jump right back into the top 5. At number 4, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have been fantastic all season long. They've also won 4 straight. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're 27-11 total this season. And then number 3, I got the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks have finally been able to put some stuff together. They're 19. They've played an insane more amount of home games than away games, though. So that's going to be interesting to see come down the stretch. They're on a 3-game win streak, though. They're 19-4 at home. They're 28-12 this season, and they're up to number 3 in my power rankings. Then at number 2, I got the Minnesota Timberwolves at 28-11. They've been 16-2 at home and have been fantastic all season. And then at number 1 for several months straight will be the Boston Celtics. The Celtics have been fantastic all season long. They're 30-9 now on the season, and they're 19-0 at home. So they've been amazing, and they've been worth all the recognition so far. Well, that'll do it for another episode of the 3&D. I want to thank everyone for tuning into the Empty the Bench podcast network for another episode. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and follow the socials at the 3&D ETB. We'll be putting out content all week. in case you missed the entire episode and just want to see bits and pieces of it. Hope everyone has a great night, and make sure to like and subscribe to Empty the Bench on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you guys next week for a jam-packed episode.